Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to begin with an infrared satellite animation that takes us back over the last day or so. We can see the large low pressure system that finally did exit the mid-Atlantic there. You can see the upper level low just spinning off coast early this morning. And behind it, we've seen some pretty chilly air for this time of year. You can actually see it quite well here on the infrared satellite imagery. Notice just off our southeast coast, you see the streets of clouds that form but kind of leave an area where there are no clouds right along the coast. That's a good indication of offshore flow here with some cold air that is tucked behind it. Now, our main story throughout the rest of this week is going to be one that's relatively benign and dry and recovering in terms of temperatures. And much of our precipitation discussion is going to be focused out west with this kind of south to north flow that you see here. But things will be changing in the week 2 pattern, and we better get in and talk about that. First, just a quick look at temperatures early this morning. Notice that we were able to bring temperatures that were below freezing all the way down to the Gulf Coast in places, specifically through the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Look at that. We even got into northern Florida, some temperatures that touched freezing last night. So pretty chilly early morning this morning, but like I said, temperatures will be on the rebound throughout this week. Now, just taking a look at how much rainfall we did get out of that last system. This is just our last 3 days here. A lot of it was in the Mid-South, getting over toward parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, northern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, that region, and into the Appalachian Mountains, where some locations were able to pick up better than 3 inches as the system kind of spun its way through here. But what we're going to see here in a few moments is that our upcoming week versus the following week is going to give us a much different precipitation pattern on the whole. Before I do that, though, I just want to give you some kind of longer term numbers here. We don't quite yet have the new temperature ranks maps that they typically come out at the end of the first week of a new month. So just to show you what the month of November did look like, though, we can see that a pretty broad swath of our southern region was on the drier side of things. That is not to say there weren't parts, like look over there in West Texas or parts of the Mid-South or over there along the East Coast that has some wetter conditions at times. And then we look back at temperatures, we averaged across our southern region, which again stretches from New Mexico all the way over to the Carolina coast. We did average about 2 to 5 degrees cooler than average. So we're going to have to see how this shows up on our ranks maps, but it was certainly a cooler month for a lot of us. So here's the big story this week, okay? Over the next 7 days, overall, things are relatively dry across the southern region. Like we talked about, look at that map over there on the left. European Ensemble wants to paint much of the wetter conditions kind of at a south to north region, hitting California pretty hard. But what we do notice is getting into week 2, that is the map that is over here on the right, we see this large corridor tucked away in through here that's going to be seeing some very wet conditions. And this is echoed quite well in the GFS as well. So this is the European Ensemble, week 1 versus week 2. Here is the GFS. A little bit more of a blown out view here, but you can see week 1, relatively dry. As we get into week 2, same pattern right in through here of wetter conditions. So we got to step back and make sure we understand the meteorology of this. So I'm going to focus on our southeast climate region, which is basically the area that I just circled right in through here. All right. When we look at that climate region from NOAA, we can see the longer term trend in precipitation is actually up. So December, precipitation in the southeast climate region is up about a half an inch over the last 70 years. So it's trending wetter. And when we look at it overall, we've had recently some very wet years. And I want to come back and grab those wettest years we do have on record for the last 70 years and try to understand what makes them the way they are. So if we're going to see a very wet December in the southeast, I want to show you 2 things. Looking first at those troughs and ridges, we see that the general pattern of the atmosphere needs to be doing something a bit like this. And I think we all know this pattern quite well. It's one where we have troughs sweeping through the midsection of the country, lifting over ridges that are just off of the coast. And that helps funnel in that Gulf moisture, not blocking any of the precipitation from really originating out of the Gulf of Mexico. We tend to get just wet out of that one. Here's another thing too. I want you to see this map over here on the right as zonal wind anomalies. Now, what's a zonal wind? Zonal is west to east flow. Wherever you see these colors, it's faster than normal. Wherever you see these colors, it's slower than normal. So we know that our jet stream in the mid-section of our planet, here in the mid-latitudes, flows from west to east. So when we see this, look at how fast these winds are here. We generally get a pretty strong a subtropical branch that kind of comes up in through like this. It also tends to flow over the top like that and meet up. So we're going to be looking for some strong zonal winds out in the middle part of the Pacific Ocean, specifically coming right off of China. And then also a strong subtropical jet that kind of comes out of the Baja and heads toward New England. That's going to be our keys to getting a wet December. So let's just look at the 500 millibar path of the atmosphere first, and we'll take a look at those zonal winds later. So first system here, finally leaving early this morning on Tuesday, exiting the northeast. Cold air behind it, but you're going to notice this. As we play through the middle of the week, broad ridging begins to build back in Texas. So the warm-up begins in the western part of our southern region first, and then moves east. What we do have to deal with is this, though. By Thursday afternoon, see this little shortwave right in through here? Talked about it in yesterday's update. It sneaks through the Texas-Oklahoma region, gets over into parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley by Friday morning. So Thursday to Friday sneaks right in through here, and that's really our only precipitation chances through the end of the week. Now, as we get into the weekend, look, we see broader ridging setting up in this area, which is why the pattern overall is calming down. So what do we need? We need to have a trough here, and this ridge has got to move here off of the southeast coast. So as we move forward in this forecast, this is now getting out to December 9th. This is the Monday, December 9th, getting into Tuesday, December 10th. Look what we end up getting. The trough sits here and broader ridging. That's a little bit farther to the north and east, but still, this is going to be able to push moisture around the circulation right here into the southeast. So here comes our first trough sweeping through next Monday into Tuesday. And then what do we notice? By end of next week, the European ensemble says, hey, let's drop another trough in here with a ridge in this area. And that's just great upper level support for multiple systems in the week 2 time period. And so we kind of see that hanging on. That also means that as we stretch out toward the middle and even toward the end of the month, if this is a pattern we continue to see, it's one that doesn't really slow things down in terms of the flow, giving us quite a bit of precipitation. So let's take a look at it here in the near term by looking at our European model update early this morning. So I can play this out to about there and show you that really through this week. Watch it again. This is this evening, Tuesday evening, getting through Thursday into Thursday afternoon into Friday morning. Look at this. It's at that time, Thursday afternoon, that little shortwave sneaks out of the Four Corners area and just brings in some light rain into Texas, Oklahoma, getting over to the lower Mississippi River Valley by Friday morning, and then moving over parts of the southeast by Friday afternoon and evening. But then high pressure dominates. Now this is the one we're going to watch. You see, as I play this forward, that high pressure cell went from here on Saturday to here on Sunday morning, and now it gets established in this area by Sunday afternoon. And look, you can already start to see the flow returning out of the Gulf. Now that's going to be warm, but it's also going to be the potential to be wet. So I told you these high pressure cells pump in that moisture. We see it all the time. It's our most common wet pattern kind of configuration throughout the year. So now we're out here to Monday, the 9th, and look, we can see the systems churning. Tuesday into Wednesday. This is all next week, getting into next Thursday. And you saw that, right? The flow around it making for a very wet week next week. And it may be until next, we're getting pretty far out here in the forecast, but we're going to have to watch for some colder air to come in behind this with those deeper troughs that do develop in the midsection of the country. So that's the story and the explanation behind what is going on in the near term. Whoops. So let's take a look at it over our next 5 days, looking first in the south central part of the United States. Remember, it's just this system coming out of here, slowly moving in this direction Thursday into Friday. We do not see big precipitation totals out of this one. Mostly in the Four Corners, getting up above a half inch. That's going to be some mountain snow out there. But all this is going to be very light rain moving across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. And then as it gets over into parts of Louisiana, well, we can zoom in on the map that's over here on the right. We see some locations might pick up a third to a half inch of rainfall, but this is a dry pattern through the end of this week. But take a look at week 2. All right, now I switched from the operational model to the ensemble. We're just looking at 2 different views here. Remember, with that trough that's digging down like this, it's going to be the return flow coming in here. We can see that getting from eastern Texas over toward Mississippi, Alabama. Let's just switch over to the map on the right. This will be the corridor that I'll be watching for the heaviest rainfall as that pattern adjusts getting into week 2. All right, that is kind of our bigger story with precipitation. In terms of temperatures, let's just take this in 5-day chunks. Remember, we're still dealing with the deeper trough that is sitting off the east coast in the next couple of days. So we do hang on to our cooler than average weather with the rebounding temperatures in Texas first. Both models GFS left, European right agree on that pattern. So warming trend in the southeast, but got a couple of days of cooler weather before we get there. As we get out into the day 6 through 10 time period, that's when we're going to be watching for the trough to establish itself. So much of our southern region is going to see near average to warmer than average temperatures as we work out to about December 13th or so. So that's really going to keep that colder air pretty far to the north of those lines I just drew here. But as we get a little bit farther, remember those troughs do start to sweep through, so we could get into mid-month and at that time start to see some cooler air invading into the southeast as the trough ridge system really kind of amplifies a bit through the middle of the month. So that's kind of our temperature outlook here. So let's conclude this story and just let me show you something. Getting out here to the middle of the month, this is valid on December 18th. What do we notice? Well, this feature here is one I talked about earlier. Strong winds coming off of China, getting here out into the open Pacific. That was strongly correlated with wetter than average conditions in December for the southeast. We can also see the subtropical jet, which begins right here and flows in that direction. So with the flow pattern largely doing what we just discussed makes for an active pattern over the southeast and over the east coast, well, the model is quite consistent with the meteorology here, and we certainly see the pattern evolving that could make us for a very busy second half of this, last 3 weeks of the month of December. All right. To finish this up, just a couple things I'll be discussing in tomorrow's long range. Things that we've been discussing are still on. We do notice that as we work through our next 5 to 10 days, still the interaction between the troposphere and stratosphere raising heights here, pinching off 2 pieces of the polar vortex, that is still in the works. So we're going to watch how this right here, let me circle it again, is going to impact the Aleutian Islands. That'll be critical for our pattern setup once we get past about the 12th or 13th of the month. Secondly, it's going to be all about this Indian Ocean dipole. We still see in our longer range forecast, look right there, you see a lack of these really warm colors that are in the near term staying here in the longer term, which means our Indian Ocean dipole event is still weakening. This affects the Mad-Julian oscillation, global wind patterns. This will change everything when this IOD event finally gets back into what we call the normal range. And we'll talk about it all tomorrow in our long range update, so I'll leave it off right here and hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you.